Hello and welcome to another AnarcoTech vlog. I'd like to begin today by saying a massive thank you to everybody on STEEMIT who gave me lots of love yesterday for my very first vlog. It was wonderful to see all those upvotes and to the RESTEEMs and to see some of the comments that came in, and they're very much appreciated. If you don't know what STEEMIT is, I did mention it yesterday, you really must get on there. It's one of the most amazing social media platforms. It's probably about the only one which actually pays you. I do know that there was another one called TSU, which was doing similar things, but not quite in the same way. And I'm also noticing that there's a lot of people who were using TSU, or however it is you pronounce it, that are coming on to Steem now because they're seeing the power of the STEEMIT platform and what it can do, and why it's just growing and growing and growing at quite a vast rate. The number of new users every day just keeps going up and up and up. People are making fantastic livings from being on the site, from interacting, and from learning about how social media can actually work for your benefit, not just sticking your ideas and your opinions on there, but actually genuinely interacting with people, new people that otherwise you may never have crossed paths with having fantastic conversations and learning loads of new things. I've learned so much from being on there that I just never got that from being on some of those other social media platforms like Twitter and Fuckbook and all of those other ones, which frankly just don't interest me anymore. So I'll say it again, get onto STEEMIT, it's the place to be. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine this morning, and he was talking about how he thinks he's missed the blockchain boat. He's seen the price go massively up from earlier on this year for things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and obviously there was a bit of a flash crash earlier on this week. I call it more of a correction and normal marketing. I talked about that yesterday, and he's convinced that it's over. And I had to say to him, look, this is the early days. Anybody that's getting into blockchain, into cryptocurrency right now is a massive early adopter. You've definitely not missed the boat. And he's purely looking at it from this financial point of view of, he's seen the big gains over the last few months, and they're still there. You can still make money by getting into blockchain and cryptocurrencies and some of the emerging techs now, learning a bit about trading. Loads of people that I know are doing it now. They're all having a lot of fun. And I think as long as you follow a few very basic rules, there's a lot of money to be made. I personally trade, but I also like the idea of just holding. Don't do anything, just buy and hold, particularly with the high volume stuff like Bitcoin, the big daddy of all of the cryptocurrencies, and also things like Ethereum. But there's loads of others that definitely are worth buying and holding. I'll talk about a few of my favorites in a little while. Have you missed the boat? Well, it's a really interesting question. No, you haven't. And one of the reasons that I would say that is that if you look at things like Ethereum, for example, Ethereum is very early days. If you look at what Ethereum is there to do, its basic purpose is to provide a decentralized platform for things like smart contracts. Now, there's been a bit of talk recently about smart contracts, and are they really as smart as they're made out to be? And I would say, look, because we're in the early days, and we're in the early days because there's very little real world stuff that's actually been produced and is out there and people are using, with regards to platforms like Ethereum. Yes, there's plenty of new cryptocurrencies which are being produced on Ethereum. There's like hundreds of them. I mean, right now, today, you can go and create your very own cryptocurrency on Ethereum effectively free of charge. I've done one myself just as a little test. Currently, I am holding all 1 million tokens of that, and maybe at some point I'll think of a project to do with it and actually get stuck into that and release them, and hey, we'll all be millionaires by tomorrow morning. I think there's an awful lot of issues with some of these things that are coming up, these ICOs. There's a lot of money raising and people pumping huge amounts of capital into some of these projects, but I'm not necessarily seeing any of them coming to fruition yet. There's certainly a lot of very interesting projects that are ongoing, and I think it's right and proper that money's been raised to help fund these projects without people having to go to traditional lending sources like the criminal banking establishment, who are just going to loan you money out of thin air and charge interest on it, thus exacerbating the global debt crisis that we find ourselves in. But hey, that's another issue altogether. One of the things that I found very interesting recently is thinking about some of the things that you can do with technology like smart contracts, and I'm personally interested in things like licensing rights, particularly for creative people, things like music. I'm a musician myself, and what I've found is unless you're plugged into some of the big companies, it's very hard for aspiring musicians to get noticed out there. And what tends to happen is a lot of them are putting their music that they've spent, hours, days, weeks, months, sometimes years creating. They're putting it on things like SoundCloud and stuff like that, and effectively they're just giving away their music, and people are enjoying it. We put our first album up on SoundCloud, and we got thousands upon thousands of plays. How much money did we make for that? We made a total of absolutely jack fuck all, zero, zilch, not a penny, not a dime. And you know what? It doesn't matter to me personally, because I make the music because I kind of really enjoy making music, and I sometimes sort of feel that it just has to come out, and I think a lot of musicians feel that way. But you know what? Wouldn't it be wonderful to actually get rewarded for what you do? And at the moment, we have this situation where the people that are making the money in the music industry aren't necessarily the musicians themselves. It's the publishing houses that effectively have the rights to the big bands, but smaller musicians are struggling on. And I think that the blockchain can change all this. I've never particularly been a fan of the idea of people getting free music and free films and all the rest of it, because ultimately some poor people out there have put in their time and their energy, and I've never been a big fan of torrenting and just taking things without actually having some form of exchange. I genuinely feel that it's important for us to appreciate each other's value, and particularly for creative people, whether it's musicians or photographers or artists or anybody that creates something purely from their own wonderful brain and with their creative talents. They should definitely be getting paid for that. And I think that things like Ethereum have got a great opportunity and a great role to play in helping individuals to realize that. So things like music licensing and rights management, these are things that could easily go onto the Ethereum blockchain. I think that there are lots of really interesting other world uses for the blockchain as well. I mean, some of the projects that I've been looking at recently, I mean, the one I absolutely love is Coin. I'm finding that more and more I look at the way that that's set up, and I think it's absolutely genius. Coin is it's like a cloud platform where you can put your files, your documents, all this sort of thing on the platform. It encrypts them, it stores them in multiple remote locations, and effectively the really clever thing about it is it uses other people's hard drive space, which they rent out, so they're earning money on renting out their hard drive space, which is unused. You know, we all have massive hard drives these days, and most of us never get anywhere close to filling them. So you can rent out a bit of space on the hard drives, but not just one hard drive, on lots of them. They're all dotted around. So, and it uses the blockchain to kind of keep a track of where all the bits and pieces of information are. So it's kind of a combination of torrenting and having, you know, bits and pieces of encrypted files all over the place. So if somebody gets hacked, they can't get all the full data, and cloud storage. And the other nice thing about it is it costs a heck of a lot less than buying storage through places like Microsoft and Amazon Web Services and stuff like that. It costs about a tenth of what those platforms charge. So, you know, there's all sorts of really interesting real world uses, and if you look at how Coin has developed, you know, its value has just multiplied and multiplied. I mean, just dramatically. I bought some Coin a while ago, and it was you know, fractions of pennies, and within a month it was like 10 times that value. You know, we did quite well there. So there are other really interesting uses for the blockchain. Everledger's one that I'm quite interested in. They're doing some really cool things at the moment, particularly doing things like tracking things like diamonds and tracking the ownership of these things, and just making sure that that whole industry is a little bit more transparent. As you know, some people know, the diamond industry is well, it can be extraordinarily corrupt. There's this thing, blood diamonds. Don't need to say any more about that. If you don't know what they are, go and have a look at it. It's pretty nasty stuff. So they're doing some really interesting work. There's loads of things that you can possibly do with the blockchain, and not just Ethereum, but some of the other blockchains as well. Recently, I heard that the UK Land Registry were planning on looking at blockchain technology to host all of their land registry records. This is a fantastic real-world use of the blockchain, although not a big fan of government getting involved in this. At the best of times, I'd much rather see the government utterly destroyed and have a, you know, a proper democracy, you know, like the one that the X Factor can arrange every single week. You know, where you can simply vote on a single issue and it doesn't cost them a penny. So, you know, you could potentially have, if you're going to have a government at all, which, as I say, I don't really want one, but if you're going to have one, you can actually run elections on a blockchain using, you know, very clever smart contract technology. And I believe there are some companies that are looking at doing that, and you can effectively create a totally fraud-proof, transparent voting system, which would be fantastic. You could do that for every single issue. We could get rid of the whole need for parliaments and congresses and senates and all of these people telling us how to live and what to do. That'd be fantastic. So, have we missed the boat? No, not at all. This is the early days. There's so much to come. If you're looking at blockchain and wondering what you can do inside of your business and your life with it at the moment, I think for a lot of people, the answer is not a great deal. It's going to take some time. And, I would definitely be recommending to people, if they've got a bit of time and space and they want to develop themselves, go and learn how to get involved in some of this stuff. Whether it's that you might be a website designer, well, go and learn some coding. Go and learn things like the Solidity language, which is the language of Ethereum. Maybe go and learn how to talk to people about the blockchain and what it can do for them. At the very least, go and tell people about wonderful platforms like STEEMIT and what it can do for them. And let's start having more and more people being able to use these incredible technologies and creating much more real world applications. And really, that's, for me, what it's all about. It's not about just making a bit of money trading. It's very much about the long term and how disruptive this technology can be. One of the things that I would like to very briefly talk about is Tau Chain, which is a very, very interesting project. And I have to say, I haven't fully got my head around it yet. I know that the other day I did buy some of the cryptocurrency that's associated with it, the Agorist coins, and last night they just went up about sort of 250% or something like that. So very, very happy this morning looking at my on some of the trading sites. So what I would say is go and have a look at this one, because tomorrow something very interesting is happening on the 1st of July, which, as I say, is just a few hours away. The developers are deliberately inflating the prices of the Agorist coin. And this is interesting because what they've been doing up until now is they've been selling the coins directly. They haven't had an ICO that I'm aware of. They've been doing things a little bit differently. They've been selling the coins directly. You can also buy the coins on Bittrex as well, so go and have a look there if you want to get hold of some. And the talk is that it's going to go up somewhere between 4 times and 10 times. I don't quite know how they're going to work that one out. Now, apparently that's just going to be the prices that you get directly from them, and I think the idea is that they're trying to reduce now the number of people that are buying directly from them, so they can free up their time to just get on with the actual development of this really very interesting and mind-blowing application. And I tend to think that this is going to be one of the major disruptors. I think it's going to work very well with Ethereum. And as I say, it's been developed by some really, really smart people. And one of the ways that I've been thinking about it is it could be the future app store of the blockchain, because rather than just running things like smart contracts on it, this thing could, as far as I understand it, it could potentially allow you to run disparate bits of code which can borrow from other places. A little bit like running different apps on your whether you're on Android or iPhone or whatever it is that you're on. As I say, I haven't quite got my head fully around it. It's that the maths and the logic involved in it are extremely intricate. If you're interested in real world disruptive technologies, that's one to go and have a look at. I definitely recommend it. So yeah, that's something to think about. Go and get yourself some Agorist coins. It's AGRS on Bittrex. They look like a great buy to me. I think that's my top tip of the week. So that's it really from me today. I would very much like to say thanks very much for joining me once again in the center of the universe that is Huddersfield. And until next time, thanks for seeing it through to the end. If you like this video, if you like what I'm talking about, please do follow me on STEEMIT, give it an upvote, give it a RESTEEM, because these are the ways that people like myself and people like you as well can actually make money and create complete financial freedom from being on the blockchain. So, you know, if you're not using it, go and check it out. It will absolutely transform your life, I promise you. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.